Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today I have a delightful conversation with Paula Findley. In this episode, Paula describes her journey into the sport and her fast rise to the top, and she discusses the effects of being a 21-year-old on top of the world and all the expectations that went with it. And it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Paula's dealt with multiple stress fractures all over her body and anemia and body image issues, but she's kept her passion alive. She's worked with various coaches to try and find the right path, but finally, now with her coach, Paula Souza, and a partner, Eric Lagerstrom, she's in a great place. And you can just hear it in her voice. It's been a journey, but she's there. We discuss her incredible performance at the Challenge Daytona PTO Championships and just so much more in this one. Now, real quick, before we go on, you'd be doing me a huge favor if you could take a moment to subscribe and share, and even a review on Apple Podcasts would be absolutely wonderful. You can find the show notes, the timestamps, coupon codes, and all the links at bennettendurance.com/media. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. And remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. I'm so grateful for the continued support of the show from these incredible sponsors. You really do need to have these products in your life. Personally, I use each of them daily. Athletic Greens nutritional beverage, Hyperice recovery tools, and the glutathione supplement Continual G. What I love about Athletic Greens is its simplicity. It's delivered straight to your door and it takes seconds to mix with water. It tastes great and goes down easy. And I know I'm getting the most comprehensive nutritional beverage on the planet in one quick drink. If you're looking for one product that has as much high quality nutrients in it as possible, then you want to consider Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens is more than just a multivitamin and multimineral. It takes it to the next level, adding a daily dose of superfoods, probiotics, greens blend, and more to support the gut health, energy, immunity, and stress. And right now, Athletic Greens is giving you, my audience, a special offer on top of their all-in-one formula. You'll receive 1 year supply of vitamin D and 5 travel packs for free with your first purchase for additional immune support. Many of the population are vitamin D deficient, including myself. I focus heavily in getting in the sun throughout the day, but when I can't, I religiously supplement with vitamin D. Adding vitamin D to your daily routine is just a great way to support vitamin D production. So if you're looking to get more out of your multivitamin and invest in your immunity, energy, and gut health, then you'll struggle to find anything more comprehensive than Athletic Greens. Take ownership of your health today and receive comprehensive nutritional insurance, a free year supply of vitamin D, and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. Now, you'll hear me mention Normatec and Hypervolt from Hyperice in several of the conversations with my guests in this show. Many of my guests and I are using these recovery tools religiously. You really must have them in your house. Sit in a pair of Normatec boots at the end of a long day. Use the Hypervolt percussion massage device to warm up muscles and loosen hot spots before working out, or anytime you have a niggling injury. They're just so easy and they're so quick, and they work. Their vibrating foam rollers, thermal technology, and Normatec compression systems just help you warm up faster, recover quicker, and simply move better. Seriously, these products are the perfect Christmas gift for any family member or good friend. Get $50 off all percussion devices now, no code needed, and get an additional 10% off with code GREG10 at hyperice.com. That's hyperice.com, HYPERICE.com, and use code GREG10 for 10% off. I have a web address for all of my listeners who already know that 1, the human body makes the most powerful antioxidants on earth. 2, the master antioxidant your body cells make is called glutathione, and the human body needs glutathione to live. 3, the reason I'm addressing a select group of listeners with this web address is that once you see what these scientists in my hometown Sydney have accomplished, it'll blow your mind. Go check out continualg.com, continualg.com. That's CONTINUALG.com. Check it out and let them know that I told you about it. All right, today's guest is one of the most incredible stories of perseverance. 10 years ago, she burst onto the World Triathlon scene in dominating fashion, winning 5 World Triathlon Series events in a 12-month window as a 21-year-old. After those events, she dealt with several almost career-ending injuries and spent the better part of a decade rebuilding herself. And these last few years, we've started to see glimpses again of the great champion. And on December 6, 2020, at the Challenge Daytona PTO Championship, we saw more than a glimpse. We saw the physical prowess and the mental fortitude and the emotional strength of one of the world's greatest back on top with a dominating exhibition of how to race a triathlon. And listen, we've been friends for many years, and I'm a huge fan of hers, not only as an athlete, but simply who she is as a person. So I'm excited to delve deeper into her journey and her process. So welcome, and thank you for joining me on the Greg Bennett Show. Paula Findley, how are you?
Hi, Greg. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. This is pretty fun.
I know. I'm excited to have you. It's I wasn't sure. I knew you'd be busy since winning the race. Have you been able to come down, or you're still on cloud 9?
Yeah, it's definitely set in, but it's also been crazy busy, constant, messages on my phone and people wanting to talk to me, and I'm loving all of it. It's just a whirlwind. I haven't slept very much, and it's pretty cool how many people watched the race and saw me win. So everyone who's had any part in my career over the last 10 years has reached out, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. And we were talking pre-show about how this year we've all been so desperate for a major event, a major championship, and to finally have such an event at the end of the year that the whole world turns up. Just how fantastic was that for you?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, everyone's been itching to race all year, and fans of the sport have been, I think wanting to watch a race. So having a production of this level that the PTO and NASCAR put on together is unbelievable and allowed everyone to kind of follow along and share in the excitement of this one and only big race of the year. So to come out and win it was totally unexpected and even more amazing since it was, seen by so many people on TV around the world.
Tell me about the preparation and the lead up. And I guess what I mean by that is it wasn't your typical preparation and lead up for an event. There's all the uncertainty of, is it going to happen? Is there going to be a race? The way that you can train and prepare, a lot of swimming pools were closed and all of that. Tell me, where did you prepare and what was your mindset like preparing for this race?
Yeah, I think the uncertainty of whether it would happen or not was the hardest part, just because training for a race of this caliber takes a lot of dedication and commitment and time, and to have it potentially not even on the schedule requires, it's a completely different mindset than you'd have going into something like Kona without question, or a world championship that was happening without question. So I was actually preparing in Canada, which also wasn't optimal because it was in the middle of winter, but I hadn't been home to see my family all year. So in September, when the forest fires got really bad in Oregon, where I live, we decided to pack up the van and take our chances and head up there and do the quarantine, visit my family, and kind of tough it out all winter and see if Daytona happened, we'd just prepare indoors. So that's what ended up happening. And it wasn't always enjoyable, but I think part of the kind of mental strength that you gain training inside, and especially on the style of course of Daytona, really played to my advantage. So although it wasn't perfect, it did the job.
Well, I saw some of, you guys, your partner, Eric, and yourself do an amazing YouTube series called That Triathlon Life that I do want to delve into a little bit later. But I was watching some of that and I watched it actually quite a while ago, but you guys were training in Canmore, Alberta.
Yes.
And it was frozen over. I mean, we're not talking when we talk winters as an Australian, or right now I'm down in Florida, but it was proper winter. And but you're preparing for a race in South Florida where, I was up at the race. The women's race was hot. It was pretty hot. Did you feel like it was okay? I mean, training indoors does prepare you for the heat, I guess, but how did you?
A little bit, yeah. We basically there was 3 of us training in the garage when our friend came and joined us. And so we created kind of like our own little heat humidity chamber in this garage. So it was not that I was heat trained in any way, but Canadian winter, it can start anywhere from like January to November. And unfortunately this year it came early. So we were basically like the snow was covered, or the ground was covered in snow October 1st, and that took away any opportunity to ride outside. And then I'm personally pretty hesitant to run in the snow just because of the risk of falling and getting injured, and doing any hard sessions when your muscles are that cold and it's below zero, I think is a little risky for me. So I just opted to do everything indoors. And it was pretty cold in Florida relatively cold the week of the race.
For Florida, it was cold, yeah.
Exactly. And the morning of the race was a little chilly. So I don't think it hurt me. It wasn't a particularly hot day. It got sunny at one point, but not to the point where it affected like hydration and things like that. So I think it was fine, even though, the cold is just really, really hard to deal with.
I don't know how you do it. The days get short and it's cold and dark, and that's the mental energy to just keep going.
Totally.
It's not easy.
If we had known 100% Daytona was going to happen, we would have drove down to Tucson and just trained there to get ready. But there was just the uncertainty. We didn't want to get down to Tucson after a 30-hour drive and then have the race canceled. So we were like not willing to risk too much,
And you didn't get any pre-races. I think I saw on your YouTube you were heading to Ironman 70.3 Texas, and that got canceled like literally last minute.
Right, last minute. Yeah. We had planned on going to Texas, and it was 2 weeks before Daytona, and it was more just for like a rest buster. Like, let's try to do a full half distance and all consecutively at a hard effort. And we packed our bikes. We were ready to go, flying on Thursday morning, and then Wednesday night, pretty late, like 11 p.m., we got an email saying it was canceled. So we were disappointed, but we'd already started to taper, and we were kind of counting down the days of indoor riding, and then had to wrap our head around doing another week of indoor riding. But it was okay. It just was a little bit of a blow, but this year's taught us to go with the flow pretty well,
I think everybody has, isn't it? It's like one of those things, like when I had Holly Lawrence on the show, she's like, look, it's not because I'm injured that I'm not racing, or, my training's reduced. It's just because I can't, and nobody can. So it makes me, I'm okay with it,
Yeah, it makes it easier for sure when everyone's in the same boat.
and then the race itself, let's think about that. So the field that turned up really was some of the greatest women from all around the world. We're missing Lucy Charles. I saw what happened to her. I don't know if she was on her way or she tested positive and then she tested negative. But I know that you raced her on the course in 2019 and you outrun her. But really, you weren't missing. It was a stellar field. And sometimes when you look at those races, sure, we can talk about the money and that kind of things, but what the money does is bring the best out of everybody, right? And that's what makes the race win so special. You beat everybody on the day that they all wanted to have their best day as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about a championship race of any sort, right? It brings out the best in people at their peak fitness.
But even this distance, I love the distance because it really did sort of bring out the short course, ITU, Olympic focus athletes, the Ironman athletes, and everybody else in between. And it's hard to even put you in who are you in terms of an athlete? I mean, we not Ironman yet, but you've still got the ability, if you wanted to have another crack at the Olympics, and we can talk about that later. But you've also, these last 2 to 3 years, really specialized in the 70.3 distance.
Yeah.
Is that a distance that you feel more comfortable with?
I prefer the Olympic distance, and I prefer racing Olympic distance. If there were non-draft Olympic distance races still in the US, I think I would enjoy that a lot more. But I'm coached by Paulo Sousa, who has a pretty successful group of ITU athletes. And honestly, Eric, and the training he gives Eric and I is very similar to what they do. So with the exception of some longer rides and different training that way, but we still do the same swim program. We do very similar run sessions. So I feel like I still train a bit like an ITU athlete. And I also think that the sport is heading in the direction where you do have to have that speed if you want to be successful at 70.3, because it's getting so fast and people are coming over from ITU and racing the long course stuff now. So the distance was unique. It wasn't quite a half, but I would classify it as pretty much a 70.3. It was almost for sure. There. Yeah.
Like you, I really wish someone, and maybe it's up to me to do it, but bring back a a big professional non-drafting series. Like we had the Lifetime Fitness series, and then there was the Ironman 5150 series that was there for a little bit. And, so Lifetime Fitness, anybody that's listening, Brahma Karate, you were amazing for many, many years. But, mate, it's time to come back and let's build up, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Dallas, Chicago, New York, all of those.
You did that series. I remember that was.
I spent my life doing that. I mean, for me, I was very fortunate if I look back and go, and, had my ITU years, Olympic years, and that kind of thing. And then it was kind of a reasonably easy shift into the non-drafting Olympic distance, which, like you, was my favorite distance. And I think towards the end of my career, I kind of did 15 or 16 70.3s. And they were good, but I think I liked their shoulder-to-shoulder racing just a little bit more. And maybe that's just because it's our engines are like that. Maybe you're similar. You did the Beijing International Triathlon, what was that, 2017? And you won that?
2 years ago. But honestly, every 70.3 and even that Beijing race, I've never been head-to-head with anyone. It's always such big gaps that I kind of finish wherever I start the run. So whether that's at first or fifth or whatever it is, it seems like the race is pretty decided after the ride a lot of the time. So I do really miss the ITU days, like back in 2010, 2011, when I won the WTS races. It came down to the last 500 meters with Lisa Norden and Helen Jenkins, and it was very dynamic, exciting racing. And this is a little different. The men's race in Daytona, I think, was a little more exciting in that way. Like there were a lot of lead changes, stuff like that. But the women's race was a lot more spread out.
I mean, you mentioned Lisa Norden. I love that. 10 years later, here you are both on the start line, racing shoulder to shoulder. I mean, was it great to have her with you on the bike? You both swapped leads and had a turn. Yeah, was that good?
Lisa was actually there last year as well. So both of us had ridden the course before in a race scenario. So I know I've been following her sort of year, and she's done a lot of time trial road cycling races like that. So I knew that if I had her in sight, that I was in a good spot. And I wasn't sure I heard she had an injury on the run, but wasn't sure. So it is really cool to, Nicholas Spierig was in the race, and Lisa Norden and Jody Simpson and all these people that I raced in 2010 were still racing, just at this slightly different distance. So it is really cool to have people still in the sport. And then also in the stands, like Laura Bent, your wife, was there, and I raced her a lot too back in the day. So just the whole community of people there that I knew from back in the ITU days was pretty neat.
Yeah. And look, let's look at the race, because you never look like you were in trouble. I don't know how you felt, and you can tell me, but it looked like you were in fourth gear, and you always had that fifth ready if you wanted it. Is that how it felt to you?
Yeah, it did actually. I mean, I don't want to say that it felt easy, but I never.
No, you can't do that, because otherwise people call you arrogant and everything else. I've had that, but go on.
It was hard, but I think part of the reason it felt so aerobically easy is because I trained at altitude in Canmore, and coming down, I've trained at altitude before, but it wasn't as much of a profound difference as this time. I came down to Florida, and it felt like I always had another gear. I could go harder. I was riding my 70.3 watts, but my breathing was very under control. So I didn't feel like I was ever on the edge of, I'm going to crack, or, I'm going to break down. So that was a cool feeling. And maybe I need to do more altitude training in the future.
Well, I mean, the altitude of Canmore was about 5,000 feet or something. It's not super high, right?
No, it's not like Flagstaff. It's almost similar to Boulder, actually, but I think that's almost good, because you can still get some intensity. It's not so limiting, but you do get also the effect of being a little bit higher. So your recovery is not really compromised, but it is definitely a noticeable difference going down to sea level. So I think it's a good height. Yeah,
I think our neighbor up in Boulder, Frank Shorter, who won the 72 Olympic marathon. When we asked him about altitude training, he said, Greg, the way we look at it is at 5,000 feet, we call one increment. And then every 1,000 feet after that is an increment. And so the effects of altitude training, obviously the higher you go, the more you have to recover, and the effects of you. So right at that, I really do think that 5,000 to 5,500 feet is such a good number to do most of your workout. Now, you can always go higher to do bits and pieces or whatever if you want, but I almost think Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center is over 6,000 feet. And now you're at 2 increments, and
Right.
it's now you got to be even more aware of the effects of the altitude. So
Exactly. Yeah. And it cuts into your recovery, and you can't do as much speed workout and hit the higher numbers that you need to. So yeah, training at 70.3 watts or 70.3 run pace at 5,000 feet, I think, is a really good thing. It's appropriate, and it worked well for me.
it really did work well for you. And when did you feel like you actually had it? And be honest, did you feel like when you got off the bike and you're like, okay, I've got several minutes here, just be patient, be calm? What was it in your mind?
To be honest, on the bike, I didn't know where anyone was relative to where I was. I knew Lisa was right behind me because I could see on the lap splits that her name would pop up right next to mine. So for the first 10 laps, I knew she was there. But then I assumed that there was 10 girls behind her, like Holly and Nicola and Jody, and all the girls that I came out of the water with were right there also. So when Lisa came past me on the 11th lap, I was sort of expecting a whole train to pass me. And I didn't look back ever, so I had no clue. But I just tried to keep Lisa within within sight. I didn't want to push the draft rules at all because I knew that would ruin my race if I had a 2-minute penalty. So kept her as a carrot. And then coming off the bike, Talbot told me we had 3 minutes on Holly and Anne. So I still wasn't super confident. 3 minutes, you can easily run that down in a 18K run, especially if you're Anne Hogg. So I just went out and tried to hold pace as best I could. And I didn't want to go out in a panic and run faster than I could hold the whole time just because they were chasing me down. 3 minutes is a good buffer, but it's not a guarantee. So I didn't know till the last, honestly, half lap, doing some calculations in my mind that if she's actually 3 minutes down, then I could probably slow down quite a lot and still have it. So I still ran hard to the end. You never know, but I was a bit uncertain. All I could do was keep doing what I was doing and not worry about what was going on back there. So
it's funny, isn't it, when you do have a lead and you're trying to do math, and I find math is your friend. And if you can do it quickly, it's amazing. Okay, I've got a 3-minute lead with 6K to go. Okay, that means I've got 30 seconds per K. Well, really, they're going to have to run this pace. This is how I work it anyway. And I'm kind of going,
I'm the same. Yeah. I was running 3:40s per K on.
Wow, that is fantastic, by the way. Phenomenal running. Good work.
And I had a 3-minute lead with 4K to go. So I thought I could slow down to 5-minute Ks, or she'd have to be running under 3-minute Ks to catch me. And that put my mind at ease a bit. But you also never really trust the splits you're getting. People were telling me different numbers, and it's true. The photographers giving me splits. So who knows if they're even accurate, they're doing their job. So you can't really trust anyone.
That's true. And then so running down the finishing straight, couple of 100 meters to go, career highlight, or how did it measure up to some of those World Series events 10 years previous?
It's hard to say. There were definitely more people at the World Series races back in the day, and the sprint finish that I always had a sprint finish with people. So it was a different dynamic. It was not as much time to enjoy it, just full on sprinting to the end. But this one I could kind of slow down and take it in a little bit. And there were a good amount of people there just because the age group race was right before us. So people stuck around to watch. So there was still a good atmosphere. And knowing that it was broadcasted, I think I was also thinking about my parents watching and my friends watching back home. And that was cool as well, knowing that it was available for people to see.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, being up there as a spectator, it actually wasn't super spectator friendly for the people on course. It was good if you planted yourself in front of the big broadcast screens that they had. And then turn around as you guys kind of came past the other way. But different to the World Series, World Triathlon Series events where they have sort of the stadium and multi laps. But for a long course race, it really was spectacular that you did get to see you guys so many times. It did get a little confusing with the lapped athletes. Did you find, were they ever a problem for you? Because you lapped quite a few, I think. Yeah,
I would say that was even the biggest challenge on the bike was navigating people that we were lapping, and not because you could still get a drafting penalty on someone you were lapping technically. You had to go 3 meters wide from these people that you're passing, and then huge surge to get past them, sometimes 350 watts just to go by, because you have this 40-second limit that you can do it in. And a lot of the times Lisa would go past someone and then they'd try to go with her. So I'd have to like surge extra to pass them. So it did get in the way a little bit, but it also kept it interesting. You know, there was something to think about and kept me engaged. Otherwise, it would just be so boring. So I didn't mind it. If you look at my power file, there are quite a few spikes from going around everyone, but I think that's okay. It kept it interesting, and it kept me honest, and like kept my power up almost, because I didn't get bored and kind of let my mind drift. I constantly had to be paying attention.
Well, what do you think about, I was thinking about it post-race about, what to do with the lapped athletes, I mean, in the ITU, they get taken off the course. Here, should they be taken off, or should they maybe be told to move to the side, or, slow down, that they shouldn't get in the way? Or then I was thinking, well, maybe, with it being a 4-kilometer loop, you're looking at 6 minutes or so per lap.
Yeah.
Maybe if they added 1 kilometer, like, how the run you went through the center a little bit, maybe if they added 1 kilometer through, so make it a 5-kilometer loop, and now we're looking at maybe 8 minutes or whatever. And at 8 minutes, I think people should be taken off the course, especially with only a 2-kilometer swim. That's not, if you're losing 2 or 3 minutes in a swim over 2 kilometers, you're more of a duathlete than you are a triathlete anyway. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on all that?
That's a tough one, because I lapped Nicholas Spierig, and she ended up finishing 10th. So it's hard to say. Like, if she was pulled out of the race, she actually ended up having a really good race and ran really well. So
that's true.
I agree. If the lap was longer,
maybe if the lap was longer,
there'd be less of that going on. But it loses the dynamic. Like, you'd almost have to leave the track and then come back in or something to grab 2 extra K. So I don't necessarily think moving out would be a good idea. Maybe being stricter about that person having to actually sit up and put the brakes on for a second if they're being overtaken, or if it's a really tough call. I mean, I think it actually impacted the men's race more than the women. But yeah, I don't know a good solution.
Well, I was talking to Alistair Brownlee post race, and they lapped Michael Weiss, I think, and he then kind of was in their group and in the way, and like for the remainder of the ride. And I mean, I was thinking about it. Well, hell, if for $100,000, I'd be finding a domestic, somebody that can't swim very well or whatever, and I'll say, I'll see you in 4K, and then you pace me for the next 76K that I have left.
Exactly.
I think that's an issue that you can run into with allowing the lapped athletes be mixing up. I mean, that's how my head thinks, which, it's kind of like,
that's interesting. I didn't even consider that, but it could in the future lead to, some domestique type of racing. So maybe the lapped athletes need to just completely drop back and not interfere with what's going on. I don't know how to regulate that, but there's got to be a way, right?
Now listen, let's move on. You've made $100,000. Are you going to upgrade the van, the Dodge Sprinter? I mean, anybody that hasn't seen it, the YouTube channels that you guys have, and you do such a good van life kind of videos. What are you thinking?
I love a van. I don't feel like we need a new van. We actually really want to move to Bend, Oregon. So Eric and I are like looking at real estate every single day now. Not that $100,000 is enough to do that, but it definitely helps with the down payment. So I don't know what I'm going to spend it on. The van Eric built out himself. So he's kind of made it perfect for us and what we need. And it's definitely not like a top of the line $100,000 camper van, but it has everything that we need to travel, and the dog is happy, and we could put 5 bikes in it. So it's pretty awesome. And maybe someday we'll upgrade, but for now it works.
Yeah. Well, I think between this win, obviously the prize money is nice, but I think it's more than that. I think this really shows you as, okay, Paula Findley is not just back, but the way you raced. I think any sponsor that's looking at 2021 and thinking, who do we back? That we want to have our brand shown, not only someone who's winning a race, but somebody that has a history, has a story. And you guys are delivering such amazing content on that triathlon life. Eric Lagerstrom, for people that don't know, is just a magician. He's one of the best men I know. He's just such a wonderful guy and doing incredible work. I think between all of that, you guys have an amazing package for sponsors to get behind. So I think you should be looking at Bend, Oregon, and going up in dollars when you think about it, because I think any sponsor listening, you should get behind you guys, because I love what you're doing.
Thanks, Greg. I mean,
go on.
It's easier. I would think so too, but it's a tough world. Like the sponsorship world is so tough. And before this race, I was like having no luck with getting anything. So it's interesting. And I do feel like our social media is super valuable, and then having a race like this should add to the package. But yeah, it's still tough. I don't know. The times have changed in triathlon, I think.
Well, you're doing everything you can. At the end of the day, it's like in my day, you just had to perform, win a race. You got a magazine cover. You had to be able to speak reasonably well. But that you do all of those things. Plus, you guys are doing the one thing that I was terrible at is, doing the social media and now the YouTube channels and these things, which are even next level. Well, you guys are absolutely owning that. I don't know what else you can do. So
that's the thing. We're doing what we can, and it's fun. We enjoy it. That's the other side of social media. Is if you hate it and you don't like it, it's hard to do. But we truly enjoy like taking photos, and Eric's really loves the video. He gets so much satisfaction from putting out a good video. So that really, really helps with making it part of our job, is the enjoyment that we take from it. So, yeah.
Well, you also have the apparel. You guys have an amazing line of that triathlon life apparel, beanies and shirts and things that people should go check out. And you can go to, I'll put in the show notes, but I'm going to mention it now as well, thattriathlonlife.com, and you can buy all your apparel that you got there. Just fantastic work. So congrats to both of you on what you're doing there. Very, very impressed on my end. And I'm not sure who your manager is, but they need to be in full gear right now and full speed ahead.
No, honestly, all these things have stemmed from just not racing this year. Like we've had extra time. So it's been a little silver lining of COVID is being able to start all these other projects.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, let's wind the clock back a little bit and tell me, when did you first sort of find your passion for endurance sports, and how'd you get into it?
Well, both my parents are athletes. My mom was a national team rower, and my dad was a runner. So that it was kind of in my genetics. And I started competitive swimming when I was 11. So not super young. Some kids start when they're like 5 or 6, but that was sort of my intro to endurance sport. I was actually a dancer growing up. I did like tap, jazz, and ballet for about 15 years. So that was my first love. And I came to a fork in the road where I had to pick between swimming and dancing, and I was in grade 10, and I thought I had a lot more of a future in swimming. So I chose that over dancing. But I do think dancing helped form my success with running. Like it was makes you a strong, well-rounded, flexible, athlete, I guess. So that did help with my athletic background.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that you can see actually how it helped with your running. And I've described running as the most pure form of dance that there is, right? For me, when you're running and when you get so fit, and I can't remember it very well anymore, but when you get so fit and your timing of your foot on the ground and the placement of the foot feels right, the breathing works with the arm hold feels right, and you can feel almost your brain just tapping the top of your skull because the timing is just so perfect. And that's why I kind of think that running is like the most pure form of dance. And the fact that you had a dancing background, it makes even more sense.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about rowing then as a sport?
Rowing, like my mom did? I sort of did, but growing up in Edmonton, it's like a really, really limited season to do that. So I didn't really take interest in it. My brother's a rower, so my mom got one child that rows. But no, my mom put us all in competitive swimming to try, and I'm the only kid that stuck with it. My brother and sister hated it. So that's kind of what ultimately led me to triathlon. I formed my best friends in swimming, and that's what kept me going every day. I loved swimming, but I also loved the social aspect of it. And my best friends to this day are still all from my swim team when I was growing up. So it's a pretty cool kind of community you build when you're going to the pool at 5 a.m. together every single day.
What level of swimming did you get to, and what stroke were you swimming?
I swam through my first 2 years of university, so collegiately, I guess, but in Canada. And 400 AM was my best event. I was never amazing. Like I think I qualified for my national time, but I was never on the podium or had any Olympic ambitions or hopes as a swimmer. It's just too many people that do it, and it's such a deep competition at that level.
I know Laura always describes it as, she basically grew up as a runner and swimmer, and she's always like, yeah, swimming, it's basically dun dun. So the first dun is you're an Olympic champion, and the second dun is you suck.
Yeah, exactly.
The margins are so small between greatness and being very poor. And there's so many swimmers. So when did you sort of find triathlon and realize that this was a strength of yours?
I think it was 12th grade. I had started getting into running at that point, just basically running. I'd show up at the meets and race. I didn't really train. I just had all my fitness from swimming. But the running coach at the time was also sort of a tri coach, and his name is Glenn Playfair in Edmonton, and he recommended I get a road bike and said, if you do a triathlon, you could qualify for the junior world team. And I was like, what? That's crazy. There's no way. Like I wasn't that good at swimming. So but I listened to him, and I got a road bike for Christmas and did my first like local kind of fun race that spring, and then qualified for Junior Worlds that summer in Lausanne, Switzerland in 2006. You may have been there.
Yeah. I didn't do Lausanne World Champs, but I think Laura did.
Yeah.
And was that your first year of tries then, and you qualified for the team?
It was, yeah. I was racing as a junior, so that was my first year in the sport, but I was pretty successful pretty quickly as a junior. So
well, you came 13th there. That's an amazing start. And then were you like the rest of us, where triathlon then was like, it was a bug and you were addicted and you couldn't step away?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I still kind of identified myself as a swimmer. Like I continued to swim and train with the university team. So swimming like 8 times a week, and I'd just go run 3 times a week, and I hardly ever rode my bike. So the seasons worked out really well because school went from September to April, and I could race collegiately. And then the spring and summer I spent racing triathlon. So the split between school and then warm weather, able to train outside, triathlon in the spring really worked well for me. And I did that for a couple of years.
Well, having the Edmonton World Series event in your backyard for all that, what was called a World Cup when we were doing it kind of in the early noughties, did that have any influence on you wanting to do the sport? Did you used to go down and watch that, or did you not even know about it?
No, I definitely did. And Simon raced after his win in Sydney. I think it was 2001, the World Championships were in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. And that was 5 years before I started the sport, but it definitely must have planted a seed and at least made me aware of the sport and how cool it was. And I watched Simon win in Sydney on TV. So my parents were at a banquet in 2001 and saw Simon and got him to autograph the front page newspaper that he was on. So I had that hanging in my room before I'd even done triathlon at all. So it definitely impacted it. And Edmonton's although it's cold and super far north, it has a good triathlon community, like Paul Tischler, who was a 2008 Olympian from Edmonton, and Carolyn Murray, who also went to the Olympics. So a couple Canadian Olympic triathletes have come out of Edmonton, which is pretty random, but
well, the event itself up there is still one of my favorite events. The crowd, the atmosphere, the lead up. I just think it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world to go for a run. Some of the running trail systems that you have there along the river, absolutely stunning place to train.
It is underrated. It is beautiful in the summer.
It's just because of all of us weaklings that can't handle the winter. There we go, no chance.
Right.
And so when was it that you were kind of, okay, I've got some ability here, I'm doing okay as a junior? Was there ever a point where, okay, I need to really, pull the trigger and go all in here?
Yeah, and the timeline is a little vague in my mind. I don't totally remember, but I did compete at the Vancouver World Championships in 2008 as a junior, and that was my last year as a junior before switching to U23. And it was around that time that I thought I needed to put school on hold a little bit and move to Victoria to be at the National Training Center. So I switched coaches. I was coached by Patrick Kelly at that time, raced at the 2009 Under-23 World Championships and finished 3rd. And it was at that point that I thought, oh, maybe I have the potential to make the 2012 Olympics, maybe. So I started taking it more seriously, and I still really value school and getting a degree, but I thought to myself, there's lots of time for that. I can take as long as I need to. If I need to take only 2 courses or take a semester off in order to train more effectively and in a better location, I was willing to do that. So that's kind of what I did, is just slowly put more emphasis and focus on triathlon training and going to race a little earlier in the season, and then put school a little bit on the back burner. Although I still slowly chipped away towards my degree and finally finished it in 2017.
Well done.
Yeah.
2017?
Yeah, it took forever.
Well done.
Literally took 10 years. Yeah, but I got it.
What was your degree in?
It's in biological sciences. I've always wanted to go to med school, and that was the pathway to get there. So very general, but also like covered all the prerequisites I'd need to get into med school.
There's only a few freaks in our sport. Like when I had Alistair Brownlee on, I don't know if you listened to that episode, but so he was getting ready for 2012 Olympics. He was the favorite. It was at home Olympics. And he basically starts telling me how he was working on a master's degree at the same time in finance, a master's of finance. I was like,
really?
During 2012. And he said, I put it on pause for, 3 months or something. But he was coming from it more as, for him, it was a great distraction.
Yes.
With all that pressure and everything else. But
exactly.
There's not in a million years could I have done that myself. And that's why I was like, you freak.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, but I do agree with not the distraction, but just having like something else to do. Because if you're, the time I started to become injured was when I put school on hold and started training more. And all I had to think about and do and focus on was triathlon. And I think that can be dangerous as a young kid who just wants to be faster, because I would do extra runs and do extra bike rides because I didn't have school to study for. So I do think that even if it's just one course online or whatever it is a healthy thing for some people to have that going on at the same time.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that next phase then, because you moved to Victoria, Canada, which, is the national training center, as you said, for the Canadians, and an amazing part of the world to train itself. Laura and I spent 4 or 5 years there ourselves. And who was then coaching, which squad, and who were you coached by then during that phase? Sort of, I guess, what are we looking at? Year 2009?
About 2009, 2010. I was coached by Patrick Kelly. He was the development coach at the time. So I was training with the Coates twins. I don't know, a lot of kind of U23 junior athletes, but we always saw Simon at the pool and Kyle Jones, Brent McMahon, the senior national guys were training kind of alongside us. So it was pretty cool to suddenly be in that kind of atmosphere where everyone was training for the same thing, versus in Edmonton, I was kind of the only triathlete running with runners and swimming with swimmers. So it definitely was I think, positive change in environment, and Victoria is much more well suited to tri training than Edmonton is. So from that perspective, it was a really good thing.
And then the progression really started to happen. We leapfrogged to 2010 and boom, winning World Cups, and then by London 2010.
Yeah, that was the first
you win the World Series.
That's right. Yeah, it was. The progression happened quicker than I ever thought it would. And I don't know, it's good and bad. I mean, it was, as soon as I won that race in London, all I wanted to do was keep racing WTS races, but I was only 20 and I still had to, be able to manage myself to not get injured, but suddenly had attention from sponsors and attention from the media that I'd never had experience dealing with at that level. So I think there was a lot of, although I tried to kind of diffuse it to people around me, when you're doing well like that, everybody wants a little piece of the pie. And I had suddenly I was working with a sports psychologist and a doctor and a physio and a chiro and a massage. And there was just such a huge support team around me that it was overwhelming, I think. And looking back now, I think it was a bit too much all at once.
Well, there was this kind of, I remember it very well. It was kind of, the Canadians had a shock win with Simon Whitfield winning the 2000 Olympics. So now Canada's known as a triathlon nation, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, where's our next champion? And then, Simon gets his silver medal in 08. But it's like this constant, well, where's our next? Where's our next?
Yeah.
And it felt to me, and we'll go into this a bit now, it felt to me as if the Canadian Federation, and they meant well, I'm not knocking them, were kind of like, well, here she is. We got it.
Yeah.
Great. Right. Do everything we can, and we're going to get a gold medal. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And they forget that they're working with a 21-year-old young woman who's been in the sport a few years, is trying to find a way. Tell me about how that all felt for you during that time.
I think they tried to shelter me a little bit from all of it, but I was also, I think, a difficult athlete to work with. Like my relationship with Patrick, my coach, started to deteriorate a little bit because he's a very shy, soft-spoken person, and I was pretty stubborn. And if I was injured, all I wanted to do was keep pushing through it and never take a rest. And so I blame myself a lot as well, but it definitely was, like I said, overwhelming to have suddenly any support I could want from anyone. Like I remember flying in the little like float planes over to Vancouver to see like the one of the best physios in Canada when I was hurt, like several times a week, and just like an insane amount of funding thrown into me. And partly due to Simon's success, putting triathlon kind of higher on the totem pole for support with Sport Canada. So as soon as there's an athlete that has the potential to medal, you get all the support you could ever want. And that was new to me. And it's very backwards because as soon as, several years later when I wasn't doing as well, that all goes away really quickly. So I just, it was a bit of a fairy tale situation, but also at the same time, when I started to struggle and be injured and anemic and not feel well, I felt a lot of pressure because I had all this support around me that, and pressure from the outside and from myself that, wow, I really have to like win a medal now at the Olympics after all this. So yeah, good and bad.
Did the love of the sport or your passions start to go with it, or how was that?
I don't think so. I think if it did, I may not be doing the sport anymore just because London was so hard. And ultimately at the Olympics, I didn't have a good race, but I never really stopped enjoying it. I don't really remember like if I loved it at that point or if I was just doing it because I was good at it. And still in my mind, I was like, I still want to go to school and like be a doctor, and I don't want this to be my whole life. And at that point in 2010, I hadn't qualified for the Olympics yet. So I didn't really know. It's hard to remember 10 years ago how I felt. And I'm so good at putting blinders on and forgetting all the shit that happens. And I still do that when something's wrong. Like I just forge ahead and look at the next thing. And that was a downfall a little bit, but it also makes it hard to remember exactly what happened,
It's probably made you stronger and you're definitely very mature now at understanding expectations, your own and others. For me, it took meeting Laura and marrying Laura to help me, because I was quite an emotional athlete, and it took me someone as grounded as Laura to help me kind of, I don't know. I found I had many years there at one point where the sport had become work. Yeah. And I'd lost my fun and passion. And it was actually moving to Victoria, Canada, where I actually got a lot of that fun and passion back. But that combined with meeting Laura in that 2000, 2001 period was like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. And it really became enjoyable again. And I found when I went to go training and racing and was really enjoying what I was doing and removing other people's expectations and trying to just manage my own, it really became fun again. Did you have a point in your last 10 years where that all happened for you?
Yeah, I think similar to you. It's when I met Eric 3 years ago and started training with him, and just a very different approach to racing. And at that point, I didn't have external pressure from anybody. Like no one was expecting me to win any races or do well. So it was only my own pressure that I was putting on myself. So it did bring kind of a new light to training. And I changed coaches at that time. I changed my environment. And a lot of it comes down to, like you said, you moved to Victoria and started to enjoy it. It's the people that you put around you. So having Eric every day to train with and bring kind of a different attitude to the sport and really flipped my switch, I think. And it took a couple of years, but finally I was able to kind of put together a performance that was similar back to my results back in 2010.
A quick mini break. I really want to encourage you to do something special for yourself and sign up to Athletic Greens and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. So when did you and Eric meet? Was that Beijing 2016, 2017? When did you guys
it was in
meet?
Beijing. I don't know how that was exactly where. We knew each other before that just from racing ITU, but that's where we really started chatting, because Beijing International Tri, you're like kind of there all week with the same 7 people and chatting on the buses and everything.
Yeah.
So that's where we really started to talk. Yeah.
Well, that's where I really first met Eric myself. I think it was back in 2015, and I think Eric ended up running me down with about 800 meters to go. I was so bummed. But he'd won Alcatraz that year, and I managed to get a gap on the bike, and then he outran me. I think it was 2015.
And, he was fit right at that time.
Yeah. Oh, a bastard. But anyway, and I just remember thinking, and we sat, like you said, there's 7 men, 7 women invited, and you all do everything together for the week, and you all become quite close, and you get to know each other very well. And I remember leaving that trip in 2015 in particular, and just think, wow, he's a great guy. And he, like you said, I think he's a very grounded guy, and he gets it, and he's a very smart man, and I think he understands how to take the intensity and wrap it up so you're intense when you need to be, but then you can kind of go and enjoy everything else when you need to at other times. Yeah. So I'm really glad you guys found each other, and that's exciting moving forward that you have each other, because I think what I want to talk about sort of now is your team and your relationships and how important they are to you, because none of us can do it on our own. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something earlier that I want to kind of talk about. It is funny how when you're on the top of the world, everybody's there for you. Yeah. But when you need them most, when you're trying to get to the top or you're on your way out,
nobody's there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How do you think you can manage that going forward? Being that, I think the best years are still ahead of you. I really do, if you want them. You. But how do you manage your team, and who's a part of your team now?
I think a lot of that willingness to jump in and support comes from being involved with the Federation and Triathlon Canada and doing 70.3 long course now. I have a much more control over my career. Like, Triathlon Canada's not knocking on the door saying, here's all this support. So I have a pretty small team, coached by Paula Sousa. I have Eric to train with. And honestly, this year we haven't really gone to see any physios or chiro or massage just because of COVID. So a lot of it's been done just kind of our little group of coach and then Eric to train with. So I think that's almost better for me, like keeping it super simple. And yeah, this year has just been strange because we haven't put all of our focus on training. There's been so many other things, and it's felt almost like, 50% reduction in training volume in total. So I think it's important to have a good team around you. Like, obviously my parents are very supportive, and I'm really close with my sister and my brother. So those family connections are good. But in terms of like a immediate IST, as they call it in the Triathlon Canada internal support team, it's pretty small at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting when you get to get rid of all the crap and just simplify it down to who do I really need? And I think having the training partner is massive. Yeah. I think even if you're not doing the same workout, Laura and I always found just walking out the door with our run shoes on. Yeah. And even if we warmed up together and did a different work, there was something about the energy of the house.
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all roses. It can also have the opposite effect where you're both dragging your feet, or it is like but it is amazing. And we've touched on a little bit the mental strategies and some of the pressure and expectations and that kind of thing. Was there ever a point where that you felt about giving up completely from the sport? Or, I mean, because you went through several years of trying to find your way. That's how it looks like from the outside. And I don't mean to be putting words in here, but
no, it's true.
What was that like?
I think if I look back at the progression since London, I switched coaches several times, and every time I did, there was like this renewed hope, and it wasn't, it was pretty fresh in my mind, those 2010, 2011 races that I did. So I always believed I could get back to that point. And so I was coached by Joel Filial right after the London Olympics, one of the best coaches in the world for ITU. And after that, Siri Lindley. So between Joel and Siri, I really was at a point where I wanted to stop, and I was looking for a coach to kind of renew my love and my excitement for the sport. And Siri was the perfect person for that. And I think without Siri, I may not have stayed in the sport. Like, she just brings so much passion and energy and love into the training, and it makes it so fun. So I moved to Boulder, trained with Siri for a couple of years. So that honestly was like a bit of a turning point, and my results were never fantastic. I mean, I was starting to get a lot fitter with Siri, and I won a couple of smaller races, but always in the back of my mind thought that I was on the right path to getting back to where I was in 2010, 2011. So although there were moments of doubt, I was pretty good at, changing my circumstance or changing coaches. Not that it's a good thing to jump between coaches too much, but I think I did it at the appropriate times in my career where I needed kind of a fresh change, and that brought some renewed hope. And then I would start doing well. And although I never had races like I just did on Sunday, I always believed I could. So that definitely helped keep me in the sport when I wanted to stop sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's, these coach-athlete relationships are just that, aren't they? I mean, they're relationships, and sometimes it is worth spending some time with a coach for a while and seeing if you're the right click. And they might be the greatest physical coach in the world, but if emotionally you're not on the same page, then it may not be the right fit. And you needed a Siri Lindley in your life, and I've had Siri on the show, and you feel like going on and taking on the world after spending an hour chatting with Siri. She's just one of those people that you need that recharge, and she's got it. I mean, this woman is absolutely what she's gone through even this last 12 months. And then she came on my show. I was like, wow, you are a special person. Yeah. So I get it. I get it that you needed that kind of a really special person in your life. But when we look at these last 3 years, and you mentioned it, finding the right man also was a huge thing to have, in your life and get you back on track. Are you working now? When you went into this race, did you practice sort of mindset strategies or any kind of visualizing specifically?
Not really. I was, the hardest part of this race was just getting ready to race in terms of logistics, like remembering all the little things you need to race, because we hadn't had practice for 12 months. So I'm like scrambling to find elastic laces for my shoes and a race belt and all these little things that distract me from thinking about the actual race. And Eric had a bit of a passport scenario before the race. Like, his passport expired, he realized the morning of travel. So we were dealing with like a bunch of stupid things like that really like took my mind off of the race. And I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but I felt a little bit like an amateur heading into it, like not prepared. I hadn't practiced with the socks I was wearing. I hadn't, like, little things I usually would check off and make sure we're totally dialed, I was a little rusty with. So looking back, maybe I would have been a little more like, okay, I need to sit down and visualize how this race is going. But
no, don't change a thing. No, I think you train in the middle of winter in Canmore or wherever it is for every race you do from now on. Indoors, don't visualize.
I know. I'm like, I need to move to Canmore and just be there and train inside all the time now. But I think there's different ways to get to that point.
No, I'm totally kidding. I love it though. Yeah. I mean, do you get nervous on the start line still these days, or how were you feeling when you stood on the start line this past race?
Yeah, so nervous. And I'd been paying attention a little bit to the social media, and the PTO hyped up this race so much, which is good, but also dangerous if you're an athlete looking at it too much, because I put pressure on myself seeing all the external expectations, because people were picking me for a podium. And I'm like, why would you do that? That's crazy. I haven't raced all year. No one knows how fit I am. So that made me nervous, just knowing that people were watching me a little bit. I mean, I wasn't a favorite to win, but I definitely had some eyes on me. So and then just not knowing how things would go in the race. Like, I hadn't swam for 6 months in the spring. So never in my life.
6 months? Was it 6 months you guys had out of the water?
Yeah, basically from April until like the summertime. Yeah. So September. It was a long time. And we did a bit of stretch cords, and we would try to swim in the Columbia River in Portland a little bit, but it wasn't really helpful. So all those little unknowns of a strange year like this, where I didn't know if I could do 2K hard in the water. Like, I was nervous about that. So I was definitely pretty anxious. But as soon as the gun went off, I relaxed pretty quickly. And I think that showed on my face a little bit in the bike and run. I never felt like anxious or nervous while I was racing. So
No.
yeah.
Well, I always found that. I don't know about you, but like as soon as the gun went off, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how to do this.
Right.
It's like this. And Laura tried to help me and, say it's not, I'm not nervous. I'm excited.
Yeah.
She always changed the wording around, and I still struggled with that most of the time. But I love that she would say, I'm excited, I'm not nervous. I'm like, oh, well, that's very clever. You're playing with the words. But I struggle with them. But as soon as the gun would go, and that was one reason why both Laura and I had to keep racing, because I got way too nervous watching Laura. And if you're watching as a spectator, you stay nervous until the person finishes.
Right.
Whereas at least the athlete, your nerves go once you basically dive in. Now you're thinking about, okay, arm turnover, where am I at? What hip should I get on, and all of that. And
exactly.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
How does your training now compare, now that you're in the golden 30s, to when you were 20 and winning those World Series events? Is it much different?
It's different because my coach is different. So I would say, like, volume wise every week, it's probably about the same, but I'm running less now and I'm biking more. So I'm pretty aware of my injury risk. And I know that I'm not the most like resilient runner. So I need to be pretty careful, and especially training with Eric, if he goes for an extra run, I need to like let that go and not feel like I have to go for an extra, a double run or a longer run or whatever he's doing. So I do less intensity on the run. And Paulo, my coach, he doesn't really like prescribe specific paces or specific power numbers. It's a lot by like your zones and how you feel. So that gives some opportunity to ease up or slow down based on how I feel, without feeling the pressure of like, oh, I need to hit 3:30 per K on this repeat or else I failed. So I think that approach has helped me a lot too, especially this year. And to be honest, the not swimming part, although it didn't help my swimming, I think it really helped the other two, because swimming takes a lot out of you. And I find it's really hard to have a good run session or bike session after a hard swim. So taking that whole element out of training really let me focus on the other two and go into sessions a bit fresher and feeling better every single day, just because, you don't have to go to the pool for an hour and a half. So that actually was a little bit of a silver lining as well to the pool closures, was just like improving the other two sports this year.
That's why our sport's so great, isn't it? Having the three sports, so you can. I had Dr. Dan Plews on, and he spoke. He won the Kona World Championships for the age group and set a record for the age group at 8 hours 24.
Yeah,
phenomenal. And he said, I had I couldn't run because my glutes were really sore, and he finds out much later that it was a sacral stress fracture.
Oh, geez.
And but he said, my bike really improved, and it was the improvement that I needed to work on, but never would, because I always had the other two. And I think sometimes, when you can kind of look back and go, I would have never taken 4 months out of the pool,
right?
5, 6, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I did, because I had to, and now, boy, did it help me, And I think even when I look at the race, and people that haven't seen it, go watch it. You looked so strong, like your hips weren't moving on the run. There was no falter. Your foot strike looked comfortable. Everything was just in place, and it just looked like you were strong and fit. You mentioned you've had a number of injuries. What have you had throughout your career? Where is your weak spot?
Unfortunately, they're mostly stress fractures, and like foot, hip, pelvis, a bunch of different spots. So I don't know what the cause of that is. I think a little bit of it is when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was racing really well, didn't have a period. I wasn't eating enough. So all of that definitely impacts just your bone health in general when you're trying to grow into an adult. So I'm suffering a little bit the consequences of that now, but I'm definitely in a way healthier spot now with my nutrition and with eating more than I ever have, but also training better because of it. And just realizing that it took a long time to get over that, fear almost of, body image, things like that. So that's a whole broader topic, but definitely, because of my early success, I guess, and, being restrictive back then, I definitely am more prone to breaking my bones, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, you did touch on the thing, and I've mentioned about myself, the body image type thing, and we all kind of, and especially I feel like in that short course stuff, it's all about, well, if you're a pound here, it's 30 seconds for the 10K type mentality. I'm not saying anybody's preaching that. I'm just saying you kind of do it to yourself to some degree.
Right. It's dangerous.
Yeah. And I'll share it with you. And I know other listeners might have heard this, but I remember exact photos standing in front of Noosa Surf Club or whatever. And please don't take my photo. It's January. I've had off season. I'm fat and I'm unfit. And I've looked at that photo recently. I was like, my goodness, what, you had a real issue. You know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't until now I look back and you kind of go, my goodness, you got ribs sticking out. You idiot. Right. Anyway, I mean, we all kind of go through that. How have you gone on top of your nutrition now? You say you're eating more. Yeah. You follow any specific diet, or is it just overall?
No, I mean, I'm not an expert in any way. And I think honestly, Eric helps me a lot with it because he eats so much and I just eat what he eats. And I've worried less about it. Like I realized that power on the bike and being strong is way more important, especially in 70.3 than being as thin as possible so you can run fast. It's very, you have to balance it. And as soon as I took the stress away from that, I actually did get leaner and fitter. And
it's amazing, isn't it?
Like an opposite effect almost. The more you worry about it and restrict yourself and end up in a deficit and hungry all the time, and then maybe overeating at the wrong times of day because of it, it just completely got messy for me, like for many, many years. So the other part of it is just growing up, like going through your 20s, your body changes and you become an adult, and all of that too. Just naturally, I got bigger and got bigger hips and all these things. So it psychologically was hard for me too, because naturally my running got slower, and I wasn't like the tiny little teenager that I was when I was running track in university. So yeah, it was a hard path, but I think I finally found a good balance between, eating well, fueling appropriately, and never being hungry because I'm eating enough, and in return able to train better and sleep better.
You make so many great points in all of that. It's so funny, isn't it? The more we think about what we should eat and everything else, the more we screw it up. It's like, just back off for a second, eat your meals and get on with the training. If you could go back and talk to a bunch of teenage kids, and I put, boys and girls, men and women in the same boat, with this whole nutrition. Obviously, I think women have a lot more other issues to deal with, but what would you go back and say if you were guiding, if there's a 17-year-old listening to this podcast right now, in terms of how you should approach your career?
Yeah. What would I say? That's a hard one. I guess don't be scared of food. Don't think of food as something that you get to eat because you're training. Think of it as your fuel to train. And I would basically go for long bike rides and not eat anything because I thought that was the best way to get leaner. But it's the opposite. If you fuel yourself properly throughout the ride, you won't be starving afterwards and make up for it with potentially too much. So just find some balance, and also don't stress about it. When I was a swimmer, I didn't think twice about anything I ate. I would just be starving all the time and shoving food in my face all the time. So it's a little bit like when you get into the running side of things that it becomes a bit toxic sometimes, just even if it's the pressure you put on yourself to be leaner and comparing yourself to other athletes. And that's another thing, is if you're looking at other athletes that are on top and they're super, super lean and you're trying to achieve that, that's not always the healthiest way to do it. Everyone in triathlon, I think there's such a broad range of body types of people that are very, very fast and successful. So there's not a one size fits all type of body for this sport. I think you have to be really strong on the swim and bike and then able to sustain that on the run. So yeah, don't compare yourself, just train well and fuel properly, and
that's brilliant.
Get a team around you. I mean, it's no secret. That's not any secret advice or anything, but
well, it's not secret, but it's something that it's great for us all to hear, whether you're 17 or almost 50. I mean, it's great stuff. Now, you're loving managing your own career, but if Triathlon Canada came back to you and said, Paula, Tokyo 2021 is, 6, 7, 8 months away. we need you on the team. We'll let you do it however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Would you take it?
Yeah, 100%. No question.
Okay.
If it was like, I didn't have to jump through any hoops and do this and that, yeah, for sure I would. And I talked to Barry Shepley about this the other day because a lot of people are asking me about it, and I don't even know how to answer because I don't want to throw Trican under the bus and say they're the reason I quit ITU. And
No, but,
I don't know.
No, but the federation and the way the system runs, it is very, very different in answering to people and all of that. I get it.
Yeah, it requires a full commitment to that style of racing because of the ITU points that are required to even get a ranking high enough to qualify. So even if Trican said I could go, I don't have any ITU points to be ranked in the top 150.
So then you got to chase that around for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd have to go do some Continental Cups and maybe miss the Collins Cup or something bigger like that in long course that I could definitely do well at. So it's really tough. I think if we all the Canadian women lined up right now and raced for a spot on the Olympic team, I'd have a good shot of it. But there's a lot more than just that, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because Emma Snowsill, when I had her on the show and we talked about sort of preparing for 2008 Olympics, and she basically said to Triathlon Australia, keep out of my way for 12 months and let me do my thing. Yeah. And if I screw up, it's on me, but leave me alone. And she went and won the gold medal. I mean, that's how I would love to approach it for you. Just go in and say, right, everybody, and it's not Trican, it's everybody, just let me do my thing. Yeah. I'll turn up on July, whatever the date is, in Tokyo, and I'll be there, have a uniform ready for me and let me do my thing.
That'd be amazing. I wish it was that easy.
No, I wish it was too. And it'd be hard to get as many points as you need and flying all around the world again, trying to collect points. And I mean, Emma was definitely in a different position because she would earned the respect from the federation and been racing well. And I haven't done an ITU race since 2017. And to be honest, the racing has changed a lot since 2010 when I was winning. I think the swimming has gotten faster and I would struggle in that department. It would, I wouldn't be going to Tokyo with much hope of a podium or top 5, just because of how much the racing has changed. So I'd have to up my swim a lot. And although I'm an okay swimmer, like it came out well in Daytona, it's a whole other level when you put in like Jess Learmonth and Flora Duffy and Katie Zaferis. It's another minute up the road. So yeah. And then you got to chase them down on the bike. Maybe you on your own, maybe you got help, but I know. I think when we look at these last couple of years, I think the joy you're having in the sport, doing it with Eric, I think you found, the way you need to be going. It's without jumping through all the hoops and everything else. So tell me,
I'm pretty happy.
As we're kind of looking to conclude the show a little bit here, but tell me some of your favorite places to train. Obviously, Canmore's at the top. No, just kidding.
Not in the winter, to be honest. No. It is in the summer, though. I mean, it's a pretty beautiful place and lots of trails, mountain biking. The pool's brand new. But my favorite place is probably, I'd have to say Boulder. Over the last 10 years, if I could pick places that I love the most, Boulder is at the top in terms of just ease of training. The roads there are easy. Their cars are used to cyclists. I love rally sport, Aaron Carson, having the pool there, and then the running's great. So really like Boulder, but also Tucson, Arizona is actually surprisingly one of my favorites. It took us a while last year to get used to it and figure it out. But once we did and found the good roads and the good running and the beautiful pool, we started to really love it. So I think we're going to head back down there in January and sort of set up camp for the winter in Tucson, where the weather's always nice.
Where is home for you? Is it going to be Bend? Is that what you're thinking? Where's home?
That's kind of tough. Eric bought a house in Portland 2 years ago. So that's kind of been our home base, and that's where I am right now. So although we haven't spent a ton of time here, it's been nice to always know we have a home base and have stuff delivered here. And Eric's sister lives in the basement, so she can kind of watch the house when we're not here. So it works really well, but it's not my favorite place to train. I think Bend is a little more perfect setup for triathlon in terms of just ability to ride and pool access and things like that. So we also have lots of friends in Bend, and I think that's a big part of picking a place that's good to train is having people to meet up with. And even if you're not doing a workout with them, I can meet up with Heather Jackson in Tucson for a 3-hour long ride, and it just makes it that much more fun and enjoyable is doing it with other people. So we've made a lot of good friends just through going to Bend and Tucson over the last couple of years.
Heather Jackson's, isn't she delightful? I just think she's one of the most beautiful people on the planet.
Yeah, such a good friend.
She's very special. What about favorite sort of races or events? If somebody came to you and said, Paula, look, I've got next year's a blank calendar, and everything's going to be back to normal, by the way, next year.
Okay.
What 3 events, should I go do?
Top of my list without question is St. George, which is great because 70.3 World Championships are there this year. But I've always just had really good races there, and the run course is brutal. It's like hilly and it's usually super hot, but for some reason I really, really like it. The bike course is fun. There's a big climb and a big descent, but it's not a technical descent. So I'm not a good technical rider. Like Nice was not a good course for me, but St. George is. So definitely that one. I guess I would have to say Daytona because I've had
the greatest race in the world, everybody.
Yeah. I truly do like it. I mean, it might seem like it could be a boring race and a boring course from the outside, but I really love it. And I love riding the trainer, and I can prepare really well that way. So that's a good course for me. And third, I would probably say maybe Oceanside, just because mostly of the atmosphere. Like it's the first race of the year. It feels like a really big deal. I love California. The course is kind of cool. It goes through the military base, and yeah, those are probably my top 3 in terms of long course races.
That's a pretty good 3. And by the way, Daytona, it's a spectacular place to put on a triathlon in a safe venue. I mean, you're within this 4-kilometer NASCAR circuit that's just absolutely phenomenal. The hotels around there were top notch. We love where we stayed up there, and I think it was a great location to do a triathlon. And if you're a newbie and doing a sprint distance, they got all kinds of distances there. And you mentioned St. George. Yeah, that's if you're going to do St. George, anybody, make sure you do your fit. The hills there they'll work you, and that run. Whew, it is hard, isn't it? Up and down.
Yeah, but some people do well. I mean, Daytona was pancake flat, but I prefer the hillier races and, sitting up out of the bike a little bit and having a little bit more of a dynamic race versus the flat the whole way.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So what's next for you? What's the plan now for you guys? And, can you make plans for next year still yet?
Well, we've become pretty good at making plans and then just like having them canceled. So I think we're going to make plans and just cross our fingers and train like we did last year, like getting ready for maybe something, but not for sure. So you kind of don't know until maybe a month out if it looks realistic or not. So we're going to, like I said, head down to Tucson in January and set up camp there. And I really like kind of staying in one spot for months instead of just like moving around constantly. So going to rent a place, and we actually got a dog this year, Eric and I, which really helped with our happiness and balance in life because he requires a ton of attention and walks, and it's been really fun. But it also adds a whole layer of complication to training camp locations and travel. So we have to consider him when we're picking our spots and places to go race. So yeah, we'll be in Tucson, and then probably Oceanside will be my first race if that's a go. Yeah.
Yeah. So you probably do Oceanside and St. George. Start with those guys.
Collins Cup is also on the schedule in May. That's another PTO race where they've got like the international squad and the American and the European. So it'll be pretty unique, and I don't fully understand, but it'll be
what
cool.
Distance and where is that going to be?
That's in Slovakia, and I think it's a 70.3, and you do it in a team format, but I need to look and see what exactly how it works. I don't really know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you'll be on the what is it? Is it a Commonwealth team? Are the Canadians and Australians together? No.
Yeah, they are. It's the internationals. So
internationals.
Basically European, American, and then everyone else is international. So yeah, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, all those people.
Good work.
Yeah.
And so this race, by winning Daytona this year, you've solidified yourself into that, I imagine.
To be honest, I don't know if I'm for sure in. I think that this race counted towards PTO rankings, but it's a bit
I'm sure it did. So. I hope it did. It was the only race of the year.
The problem is they said they would freeze the rankings this year So I don't know if they're making an exception for PTO, which I think they should, but I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So next, what about long term? What do you want to do in the sport?
A lot of people are asking if I'm going to do like a full Ironman, a Kona, and I think I probably will. It's definitely not in my like short-term 2-year plan radar, but Kona is like the big deal and the big race of the sport, I feel like. So it'd be fun to like do it at least once or twice seriously and see if I like it. I personally think I'll thrive more in like a colder race. Like I'll have to go do Ironman Ireland or something where it's pouring rain, but I do eventually want to do one. And then who knows how long the sport will let me keep going, and how long my body will hold up. But this past Sunday was a bit of a confidence booster, knowing that, okay, I'm 31 now and I can still race with the best people. So maybe I'll be in it longer than I thought.
Yeah. I mean, still race. It was, you were clearly, in the place you should be. And this sport, you just, throughout this conversation, I can just tell you're in a great place, and that's probably the biggest part of all of this. You can have the best training plan in the world, but if you're not happy, if you're not content, if your home life's not right, there's a whole lot of things that you have to align, all your relationships and everything. And it's been really great to just chat to you and just, I don't know. I've sort of, we've known each other quite a while. And last time I think we saw each other before Daytona was in Boulder at our house. Probably 4 or 5 years ago. And, just seeing you sort of grow out of that sort of time into who you are now. I'm just so excited for you and Eric, because you're in it together. It's a journey together.
Totally.
Where can people follow you, and all your stories and everything that you got going on?
Well, the best way is probably to watch the vlog if anyone has interest in that. We put them out every Sunday. So Eric, we film in the week and then Eric edits and puts them together to release. And he didn't miss one all year for 2020, except for the day of Daytona. So there's plenty of content if you want to catch up on that. And obviously we've got Instagram and Twitter and all of the things, just under our own names. So you can follow us there as well.
Perfect. Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes. And yeah, if you want to go to YouTube, it's called That Triathlon Life, or you can look up Eric Lagerstrom. But they're all right there, and they actually are very, very entertaining. I enjoyed watching so many of them. So, congrats to what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. It's been a real thrill. And I know you're busy, so I really appreciate it.
No, this was super fun. It was, I appreciate you asking me. So thank you so much.
Of course. Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you want to go to bennettendurance.com/media for all the show notes, the timestamps, coupon codes, and all the links, you can go there, bennettendurance.com/media. All right, stay on the line. Thanks for that.
Thanks a lot for listening to Be With Champions. If you've enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Be With Champions Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.